is the CNN headline. We're going to be getting into some more of this news throughout the hour, obviously, as it develops. This is all part of an orchestrated program. And no puppet George Bush, Barack Obama, or Mitt Romney is going to save you. It's the Federal Reserve or us. It's the king, dragon rulers of this system. They have to come down, not their puppets. Now, Prodigy of Mobb Deep, legendary icon of hip-hop and rap, is our guest, really exposing the Illuminati program. And we were getting into, folks, coming to him and saying, we're trying to wake up, folks, and they're not listening. It's because they're following a false mirage, a false culture sold to them by the social engineers. But the good news is we're beginning to break through. And one of the most common questions I get is, get Prodigy on. He's talking about stuff you're talking about. So here he is, sir. And you got cut off by the break. This is a short segment. You were talking about people have to want it. And then let's get into your view on the Illuminati and who's running this system.
Yeah, so, like I was saying, it's hard to get people to listen and to get people to want to change. They got to want that change on their own. That'll never happen. You can't force somebody to want to change their life and change their way of thinking to understand what's really going on, that they've been manipulated. Their parents and their grandparents have been manipulated. It's hard to break somebody out of that spell, and their way of thinking and their belief system. You know what I mean? Because they're in a comfortable space where, it just shatters their whole entire world, and their way of thinking. It hurts too much. It's way too comfortable for them to just stay the way they are. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like Neo in The Matrix when Morpheus gives him the red pill, and he goes, look, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's a difficult thing, and I found that real challenging, growing up and dealing with the environment that I come from, that street world where, it's a lot of knuckleheads, It's real difficult to reach them, So, I had to learn the hard way that, I'll just sit back and the people that are around me that notice what I'm all about and the things that I learn and, the things that I put in my music a lot. And those that want that change in their life, they'll come to me. I don't even have to find them. You know what I mean?
How did you begin to awaken?
I mean, it was about 1989. I went to high school in Manhattan. I went to art and design where I met my music partner, Havoc. You know what I mean? And back then they used to have these tables out in the street on random corners in like Queens and Manhattan, Bronx and Brooklyn, all the 5 boroughs or whatever. They used to have these tables, and it was like Muslim guys selling books. You know what I mean? Or they looked like they were Muslim to me. You know what I mean? Because they had on the garb, the hats, and the whole get up or whatever. So I used to stop at the tables and I used to buy this coconut oil because it smelled. I like how it smelled. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
stay there. Let's come back. We've got Prodigy of Mobb Deep on with us right now. Long segment coming up, and also Prodigy, when we come back, let's plug all your websites and things. There's so many of them. I'm going to make sure I get the right ones out, so we'll drop those on people. On the other side, I'm Alex Jones. This is the Genesis Network, GCNlive.com. All Hades is breaking loose right now in the economy. Everything is proceeding as the globalists have foreseen it.
We now take you live
to the Central Texas Command Center
in the heart of the resistance. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
We are back live. Colonel Anthony Shaffer is our guest. We're going to be talking to him here in just a moment. Don't forget, coming up starting tomorrow night, it's quite a commitment, but we're making it because we're reaching so many millions of people. I kick off InfoWars Nightly News, September 1st, 2011. So starting tomorrow night, every weeknight, 7 p.m., at least a 30-minute news transmission of condensed, focused, hard-hitting analysis and special reports. And many nights we're going to have expanded special reports after the news, live interviews, the premieres of documentaries, all of it at prisonplanet.tv. And either later in the show today or tomorrow, I'm going to unveil some new features at prisonplanet.tv. If you're not a prisonplanet.tv member, please join today. It's 15 cents a day, $5.95 a month, or get 3 months free when you sign up for a year, and truly support the tip of the spear in the alternative media's attempt to awaken this country and the planet to the global crime syndicate so that we can turn the tide and restore our republic and push what I call 1776 worldwide. The ideas of true liberty as enshrined by people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, to take the true ideas of liberty and to promote that on a planetary scale. So we are 1 day, 7 hours, 25 minutes, 6 seconds away from the launch of the InfoWars nightly news. And so much more is going to come out of that, obviously, because you've been supporting us over the years. But if you're not a prisonplanet.tv member, today is the day. Now, Congressman Ron Paul is scheduled to join us coming up in about exactly an hour from now, like a little under an hour. He's scheduled to join us to talk about the campaign and a host of other very important issues. I'm going to get into the dangerous Gardasil shot. The Mexican government says they're going to inject every girl in their population, starting with all the 9-year-olds. And they're implying it's going to be forced, though they don't even have that authority, just like here in the U.S. they don't. But it started with Rick Perry saying it was the law and you had to. He's now apologized for that. A day late, a dollar short, and a lot of dead girls behind him. Lou Rockwell called it criminal and called him a dirty criminal for it. I agree with that. Ron Paul's former campaign manager has a lot of courage. Stand up against these monsters. Rick Perry, it's also now come out, praised Hillary Clinton in speeches and in letters in 1993 and supported Hillary Care, even more socialistic than Obamacare. Now, joining us with very important breakdown of Libya, Syria, terror threats, and other issues is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer, U.S. Army, who gained fame for his reports about the situation with the September 11th attacks and the fact that the military in many areas was basically told to stand down. And he joins us now to break down the latest geopolitical developments. OperationDarkHeart.com is where you can find his latest best-selling book. It's good to have you here with us today, Colonel.
Well, thanks for having me, Alex. Good to be back on with you. It's been a while.
Absolutely. So much is happening. I've got my questions, but out of the gates, what bee is under your saddle?
Well, you know, I'm glad you brought up the whole Libya thing, and this is one of the peculiar things where I think we are just totally out to lunch on what's really going on, I think, and we being the American public, for two reasons. First, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's been there's a meeting in Paris this week with businesses, global businesses, and a lot of the Libyan rebels looking at how to carve up the outcome of the Libyan conflict. And keep in mind, we don't even have a constitution there yet. You've got folks already trying to make business deals with the rebels, and of course, we don't even know who's doing what. So, you know, when you look at that fact, and you look at the fact that we've spent $1 billion, and I know that in terms of the budget it's not significant, but, you know, $1 billion would go a long way to fix a lot of bridges, make a lot of railroads, and relieve a lot of folks who are having a hard time with the economy right now. So this has all been done in the name of the White House, and I was just over talking to some staff, some congressional staff on this very issue last week. Alex, the Congress has never received a single report on what the Pentagon is doing, who they're giving the intel to, and according to the Pentagon in their most recent reports from last week, they have given 60 to 70% of the intel, which has driven the NATO attacks against rebel targets or against Gaddafi's targets. Well, who exactly authorized this? Because Congress never did this, and most strikingly, and I've been talking to Bruce Fine. Bruce, you might know, wrote a lot of books on Constitution. He's a constitutional lawyer. Stated without any equivocation that the president is now in violation of something called the Anti-Deficiencies Act, and that's within Title 31 of the U.S. Code, which basically says if Congress gives you money to do something, you cannot arbitrarily decide you're going to do something else with it. In the case of Libya, there's been no obligation or approval of any obligation for funds to go against the Libyan conflict. So And no matter who you are, right or left, we should all be concerned about the fact that there is no interest in following what I think most would argue the rule of law and the constitutional basis that requires, a give and take, an oversight system within our government.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, Colonel. That was actually one of the things I wanted to raise. Ron Paul, of course, is called the constitutional lawyer, Mr. Fine, the top constitutional lawyer in the country. He's been on this show and said this is impeachable. It's completely unconstitutional. I know you're still in the military, so you obviously can't go that far. But when Congress went to Obama 4.5 months ago and said, look, we'll give you the money and the authority, but you've got to go to us, he said, and put a letter out and said, I don't need Congress. I have the UN, and I'm doing this, quote, for the credibility of the UN. And it does add incredible credibility. It says our president takes his orders from them. I mean, the Congress makes war, as you know. You're a commissioned officer. Right. Congress gives the orders. The president then executes it as the executive. But the board of directors, who are elected by us, is the House, is the Senate. Right. We now have a super Congress. Now the spending and cutting bills don't come from House members. It just comes from a 12-member super committee with the president, the 13th head. I mean, so this is a constitutional crisis. But you just brought up something that I saw a blur, but I'd forgotten to cover. So I guess, for lack of a better term, I didn't know because I never covered it. If a tree falls and nobody hears it, it didn't make a sound. And that's that Congress isn't even being given intelligence on this giant North African operation. That's incredible.
Right, and I think the American public needs to really take notice of this. And again, the person I talked to is actually his member he works for is a member of the House Armed Service Committee who should be briefed. And this is where there's huge problems. And it's not, and again, like you mentioned, Alex, it's not like the president wouldn't have gotten authorization or wouldn't have got money. He just chose to not to deal with it and say what I'm doing is not a war. Now think about the logic here that he's using, because by President Obama's logic and the way they're approaching this, you could use a nuclear weapon on a country and say, oh, it's not really a war because we didn't have boots on the ground. So that's how insane the premise of the policy is, that you could actually use an incredible amount of deadly force against any given target on the planet and basically say, it's not really a war because we didn't put boots on the ground.
Well, Colonel, this is Caesar crossing the Rubicon that led to the end of the Roman Republic, and Obama's lawyers know exactly what they're doing. The Pentagon lawyers, as you know, came to him and said, you can't do this. And he said, I'll do whatever I want. So this is brazen and being consciously done. Talking to other military brass who you speak with, are they concerned about this?
Yeah, the whole. I've spoken to several retired generals who have worked in a variety of administrations, and you might find this ironic, but one of the administrations which I was told had the greatest interest in listening to generals was actually President Clinton. Clinton would actually bring folks in and talk to them if they disagreed with policy. From what I'm hearing, Alex, that's not going on now. It essentially is a send mode only. Basically, you take the policy, you try to figure it out, and you move forward with it, and that's about it. And if you have concerns, then the concerns are really not welcome. And this is a dangerous trend because we as officers are trained to give our best judgment. And if our judgment is it's not a good idea, we need to be able to tell you that. And we're not telling you to be disloyal. We're telling you because there's reasons why you need to be cautious.
Well, it's more than dangerous. It is absolute 100% tyranny. It is 200 proof evil. And if a president's crazy and doesn't want to listen to the military, that's one thing. He is the commander-in-chief. But he's only the commander-in-chief once Congress gives him the green light to execute their declaration of war or their authorization to use force, as you know.
I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Thomas Jefferson. It's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
This is a complete departure from the Constitution. And we're seeing it on the power of the purse.